Hello everyone, welcome back to Game Easy, Roll Good. We're going to be talking about something a little different today. My last few videos have been very crunchy, very mathy. I want to do something a little lighter because it's just takes so long to do those videos. Of course, I made custom icons for this one, but that was a little more fun. We're talking about the Origin Feats in the Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook for 2024. So these feats in particular are ones that you're going to get at level 1 when you take your background. One thing to note is that in the Player's Handbook for 2024, these things are attached to your background as in they're pre-selected. In the playtest, we saw that they had the custom background option, and that was originally the default options that you could build your background however you want. And then there were presets after that if you wanted to, not have to worry about making those decisions. For whatever reason, even though I think those were very popular to have the custom background, it just didn't make it into the Player's Handbook. Pretty disappointing. So if you're a DM, I would just strongly recommend, if your players want to be able to choose their background feed at level 1, to let them. But there's nothing wrong with choosing one of the pre-made backgrounds. I just like having the ability to make my own choices personally. But let's get started with alert. We're going in alphabetical order here. So the new alert in 2024 says initiative proficiency. When you roll initiative, you can add your proficiency bonus to the roll. So old alert was +5 to initiative. This one is your proficiency, so it starts off much lower. But by the end of the game, your proficiency bonus goes up to +6. So it's better by then. And then the second feature says initiative swap. Immediately after you roll initiative, you can swap your initiative with the initiative of one willing ally in the same combat. You can't make this swap if you or the ally has the incapacitated condition. So this is actually very, very cool. This is something we've never really been able to do before, unless you maybe have this sort of rule off the table. I know in our table we have the option we can only lower where we are in initiative if we want to like team up with one of our other players, but we can't necessarily switch. But this is allowing you to switch places. So this is going to make or break some combats. If there's a specific person you want to go first, if the rogue rolls really high, but they have a wizard who can drop a really good control spell at the beginning of combat, you can switch places with them. So this is going to be pretty combat defining. It allows a lot of strategy. It allows a lot of quick role play moments like, hey, I'm going to hang back, I'll cover you, you go ahead, right? It's just little moments like that I think that can make things shine, and I'm a big fan of anything that promotes that kind of teamwork in this cooperative storytelling game. So we're going to start off pretty strong here. I'm going to put alert right up at S tier. I think alert is something that anyone should consider taking. Again, I'm not here to tell you how to play or what to play, but this is strong enough that if I were building an ideal group, I think even if it's 4 people, I would say probably I would want at least 2 of them, probably no more than 2 of them to have alert. At least 1, 2 among 4. Again, it gives you the better options of someone with alert having the highest initiative, and then being able to put the person you want to have the highest initiative in that position. So let's move on from alert. Again, we're starting off pretty good, and then we're going to move on to crafter. It's a very large feat, so it's going to cover the screen for a little bit here, but it says tool proficiency. You gain proficiency with 3 different artisan's tools of your choice from the fast crafting table. So you can't choose just any tool. You have to choose the tools from this table down at the bottom. It says discount. Whenever you buy a non-magical item, you receive a 20% discount on it. Lastly, you have fast crafting. When you finish a long rest, you can craft 1 piece of gear from the fast crafting table, provided you have the artisan's tools associated with the item and you have proficiency with those tools. The item lasts until you finish another long rest, at which point the item falls apart. So you're a good crafter, but not a great one, apparently. You can just make things in a pinch. You're basically MacGyver, right? However, I don't think that this feat is honestly very good, unfortunately. Now, there have been some pretty cool changes to the mundane items. There's a lot of descriptions among them, especially for like the chain, the manacles, the rope, the net. The rope and the net are on this list. There's just a lot of very mechanical additions to those that necessarily weren't in the Player's Handbook, or there were some mechanical explanations in the Player's Handbook in 2014, but they're not quite as explicit as they are in 2024. I might cover that in a future video just because I think it's interesting how these things work now. But among this list, there just isn't a lot that I think is very useful, and nothing that I don't think just normal player ingenuity or a spell could make up for. Getting proficiency in 3 tools is fine. If your DM has a robust crafting system, homebrewed into their game, this might be useful. The discount on mundane items, I mean, early on that might be useful unless your DM is like an econ major and they make that their whole personality, and you're playing capitalism the game. Maybe this is good for you, but otherwise I don't think, eventually you just have enough gold that mundane items are just kind of a joke. And then fast crafting, again, none of the items on this list are particularly great, although you can maybe pull some cons with it. Say, hey, I want to sell this thing that I crafted. How much is it worth? I don't know what the most expensive thing on this list is, but, it falls apart after the end of the long rest, so you can kind of scam someone with it. But overall, this is a pretty disappointing feat. I don't think I could ever, even as a meme, consider taking it. So I'm going to drop this one down to the D tier. So we're starting off pretty polarized, right? Alert is great. I would probably consider it. I would hope at least one person has it in our party at all times. Crafter, if I could leave it off this list, I would. That's how bad I think it is. Moving on to healer, we have battle medic. If you have a healer's kit, you can expend one use of it and tend to a creature within 5 feet of yourself as a utilize action. Utilize is effectively the same as the use an object interaction from 2014. It's just now called utilize. That creature can expend one of its hit point dice, and then you roll that die. When a creature regains a number of the creature regains a number of hit points equal to the roll plus your proficiency bonus. So even at level 1, your proficiency bonus is +2. I think the vast majority of players at level 1 probably have no more than a +2 to their constitution unless they're really going into it. So even at level 1, this is basically the same as rolling your hit die during a short rest. And then at level 5, it's a +3. And then, it just scales up from there. So this is probably on average better, if not greater than rolling that die during a short rest. Now, of course, the trade-off is that you're trading healing now for the ability to heal later during a short rest. So you probably don't want to use this too much, unless we'll see how many ways there are to recover after combat in the 2024 rules. But I do like this feature a lot. But it's just worth noting that, I do believe that you recover all expended hit points, all expended hit die after a long rest instead of half in 2024. So that's worth noting as well. But during the adventuring day, if you're using this feature a lot, you're not going to be able to heal as much during your short rests. Worth mentioning. Lastly, the second feature says healing rerolls. Whenever you roll a die to determine the number of hit points you restore with a spell, or this feat's battle medic benefit, you can re-roll the die if it rolls a 1, and you must use the new roll. Of course, I think no matter what, you're going to want to use the new roll because it's either bigger than a 1 or it's the same thing as a 1. You can't roll negative, of course. But it's a very good feature because not only does it affect the battle medic feature from this feat, but it affects the healing spells, which have all been buffed in 2024 to basically do double the amount of dice in healing that it did before. So, for example, the healing word at level 1 is now 2d4 from 1d4, and it scales accordingly. So you're more likely to roll ones because you're rolling more dice now, and now you can re-roll those ones and more likely, land on a bigger number. So you're just going to be healing more than you used to if you choose this feat, if you're planning on playing a healer. Not that every party needs a healer. This isn't, the Holy Trinity sort of RPG. But if you want to play that character, this is a very good feat, and in that situation, I would take it. But how do I feel about healer? So I don't think every party needs it. I think it's a very niche play style. However, I think it comes up often enough. I'm going to start this in B tier. I'm going to put it in B tier for now. I might change my mind later. Okay, let's move on to the next one. We're going to go to Lucky. All right, Lucky has changed in 2024. So let's take a look at what it says. It says luck points. You have a number of luck points equal to your proficiency bonus, and you can spend the points on the benefits below. You regain your expended luck points when you finish a long rest. So to start with, we have less luck points than we did in 2014, where you started with 3 and you always got 3. However, this one scales with your proficiency bonus, so you'll have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we can use them on the following benefits. So first one is advantage. When you roll a d20 for a d20 test, and again, a d20 test is just any ability check, saving throw, or attack roll, you can spend 1 luck point to give yourself advantage on the roll. And then it has disadvantage. When a creature rolls a d20 for an attack roll against you, you can spend 1 luck point to impose disadvantage on that roll. So the number of the things that you can actually apply this luck to has changed. You can't just apply it to any d20 roll. For creatures, you can only apply it to their attack rolls. You can't apply it to their saving throws or anything like that. I don't remember you can do that in 2014, but and then for you can only do it on your d20 tests, which can't do it on initiative if you really wanted to use it on initiative. And then the big nerf, the big change from 2014 to 2024 is that the 2014 one said you could just re-roll an extra. You could just roll an extra die and then choose the highest of any of them. So the big thing that broke the original Lucky is that you could turn disadvantage into triple advantage by instead of rolling 2d20s and dropping the lowest you roll, 2d20s, roll an extra d20, and then choose whichever one you want. You can't do that anymore. However, Lucky does give you more uses now to make up for it. I think that's a pretty good trade. Again, Lucky was broken. It needed to be changed. I feel pretty confident putting Lucky at a solid A. If I wasn't taking Alert, I would probably take a look at Lucky before I'd take a look at either of the other ones currently on the list. Okay, moving on from Lucky, we're going to move on to Magic Initiate. We're first going to look at the description. So there's three sub choices here in the Magic Initiate feat. So we start with 2 cantrips. It says you learn 2 cantrips of your choice from the Cleric, Druid, or Wizard spell list. So those are our 3 sub choices. And then you choose Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma for your spellcasting ability for this feat's spells. So you choose this when you select the feat. Of course, typically you want to choose the same ability score that your primary class is going to use. Then you also get a level 1 spell. So you choose a level 1 spell from the same list you selected with this feat's cantrips. You always have that spell prepared. You cast it once without a spell slot, and you regain the ability to cast it that way when you finish a long rest. You can also cast the spell using any spell slots you have. It's pretty much the same as the current Magic Initiate, but then we also have Spell Change. Whenever you gain a level, you can replace one of the spells you chose with this feat with a different spell of the same level from the chosen list. So you can replace a cantrip with a cantrip. You can replace your level 1 spell with a different level 1 spell. All need to be from the same list that you originally chose when you took the feat. Lastly, this feat is repeatable. So you can take it more than once if you take it again at level 4, 6, whatever it is. But I don't know if it's worth doing that. There are probably some things that I'd want to get off of one of these spell lists, maybe at level 1. I don't know if I'd want to take it beyond level 1, but you can if you want to. So let's look at the individual lists, because we're going to break this down into Cleric, Druid, and Wizard. We're going to start with Cleric. So here is the Cleric options. This is just the spells that are in the 2024 Player's Handbook. I'm not counting all spells that have ever been created that are on the Cleric spell list. So in cantrips, we of course have Guidance, which is a standout. But beyond that, there isn't really a whole lot that's exciting in cantrips for Clerics. That's kind of always been the case. Sacred Flame is fine. It's nothing to write home about. Spare the Dying is fine. Toll the Dead is pretty good damage if they have low wisdom, but attack cantrips are generally better, and the Cleric doesn't really have much for that. And then at level 1 spells is where actually Magic Initiate gets really interesting, because the ritual casting feature has been removed from class features, and it's now just a feature of spells. So any spell that has the ritual tag can be cast as a ritual by anyone who knows that spell. So even a fighter, if they take a Magic Initiate, and let's say I pick Magic Initiate Cleric and I take, let's say I take Detect Magic, I can cast Detect Magic as a ritual as many times per day as I want. I can cast it once as an action for free, but anytime after that, I can still cast it as a ritual. So that's really interesting. That's a very powerful feature that wasn't there before. So that is worth considering. That's probably the biggest boon to the Magic Initiate Origin feat. I'm probably not going to be looking as much at the single-use spells, such as, Bless is pretty good. If I wanted to, put Bless on a wizard, I might consider taking this feat. Outside of that, I don't know that there's a lot of good spell. Guiding Bolt, if you want a nice single target nuke. I'm not really too impressed by the Cleric spell list for Magic Initiate, to be honest. Not compared to the Druid. The Druid has a lot of the same spells that the Cleric does, and then the Wizard kind of has a lot of good options, so we'll take a look at that in a little bit. But I feel pretty good at putting the Cleric down. I'm going to put them down at C tier. I think, again, they share too many spells with the Druid, and I think the Druid list is just a little stronger. That I feel like there has to be something very particular you're going after with the Cleric spell list. that in most cases I'm not even going to look at it when I'm even when I'm thinking about Magic Initiate Wizard, or sorry, Magic Initiate to begin with. I'm probably not thinking about the Cleric. Okay, moving on to the Druid, because I said the Druid shares a lot of spells with the Cleric. So looking at their cantrips, can we have guidance? That's the most important one to be considering, to be honest, at least on the Cleric spell list. Resistance is on there. I like at the play during the playtest. Resistance looked really cool, although they changed it to be a little different. I don't really like it much now. Starry Wisp is like a single target fairy fire, which is pretty cool. What else is there? Poison Spray, I think, was changed to be better, although it depends on how resistances shake out in the new monster manual, if there's less immunities to poison. Thorn Whip if you want more control. Shillelagh is actually really good if you need Shillelagh on a class that can't get it and you want to just have a wisdom-focused character. That's a very real thing now. So the big buff to Shillelagh is that the damage scales with the cantrip scaling. So it starts as a D8 and then moves up to a D10, D12, and 2D6 by the time you get to the final cantrip scaling. So I think that's going to be really exciting to play with. I can't wait to be able to play a build that wants to use that, or at least build a character and see how that pans out or how it looks on paper. And then for level 1 spells, for rituals at least, we have Detect Magic, Detect Poison and Disease, Protection from, Purify Food and Drink. Again, these were all spells on the Cleric spell list. And then finally, Speak with Animals. So if you if you're the kind of person who does like to speak with animals and you don't want to be a spellcaster though, you want to be a fighter or a barbarian, you can now just get that as Magic Initiate Druid. So that's pretty cool. As for single-use spells, Fairy Fire is very useful, even if I'm using it one per day. I can give advantage on I can possibly give advantage on attacks against a group of enemies instead of just one. Let's see, Entangle. It's a little niche. What else would I consider here? Cure Wounds, Healing Word, of course, those are all on the Cleric spell list as well. Long Strider. Nothing too big here, at least in the level 1 spells, but I think they have a really strong cantrip list, and they have the same, a lot of the same spells at level 1 that a Cleric does, plus probably a few more niche things. Ooh. Let's take a look. So Magic Initiate Druid, it is better than Cleric. I'm going to put it up here in B tier. Do I think it's better than Healer? I don't think so. I'm going to keep it below Healer. All right, let's move on to Magic Initiate Wizard, because this is when it gets a little more interesting. So Wizard has, again, a much more robust spell list. It doesn't really have, I put a lot of value on guidance just because I like to be able to add numbers to my rolls. But of course, Wizard doesn't have guidance, but they do have Minor Illusion. Mage Hand is really good. The new True Strike is very good. So for like an Arcane Trickster Rogue, if you want to be able to use an Arcane, if you want to use True Strike on every attack, you can do that now, and it uses your intelligence instead of your dexterity. So you can be an intelligence-based rogue, which is pretty cool. Minor Illusion is good. Mind Sliver, I'm kind of partial to, because I like to be able to debuff people's saving throws when I can. Again, I don't think, because I put a lot of value on guidance, but however, I think there's enough here that if you choose Magic Initiate Wizard, you're not mad about it for the cantrips. But in the level 1 spells is when Wizard really sets itself apart. So the Wizard is the ritual caster. It's what they do. So they have a lot of different options. So we have Alarm, which is an option. We have Comprehend Languages, Detect Magic, which of course was on both of the other spell lists, Find Familiar, Illusory Script, Identify, as well as Tensor's Floating Disk and Unseen Servant. Of course, the big standout here is that Find Familiar is on this list, and again, anyone can ritual cast now, so anyone can take Magic Initiate Wizard at level 1 and get Find Familiar and be able to ritual cast that as long as they have the material components. And we saw that Find Familiar was possibly being nerfed in the playtest, where they had specific stat blocks, or a specific stat block that had like a flying creature, a generic flying creature, generic swimming creature, and then a generic creature. However, they kind of reverted those changes, and it's basically more or less identical to 2014. So the owl still has flyby. The rat, I believe, has a feature that's similar to flyby, so they can both, run up, give the help action in combat, and run away without taking an opportunity attack. And of course, they make very good scouts. You can still see through their eyes and hear through their ears. So based on that alone, I think Magic Initiate Wizard is extremely strong. I mean, you could have a level 1 party where everyone has a familiar, and you just drive your DM crazy. I'm not saying you should do that, but you can if you want to. So let's put this. I feel pretty confident putting this at A. I'm almost tempted to put it in S tier because I think Find Familiar is that strong. I do think this is probably stronger than Lucky, just based upon the utility of Find Familiar. If you're never going to take Find Familiar, I'd probably put this down even at B tier. But Find Familiar is that strong that I feel confident boosting it up just on the strength of that spell alone. Okay, let's move on from all the Magic Initiate shenanigans. Let's move on to Musician. Musician says you get instrument training, so you gain proficiency with 3 musical instruments of your choice. Secondly, you get Encouraging Song that says, as you finish a short or long rest, you can play a song on a musical instrument with which you have proficiency and give heroic inspiration to allies who hear the song. The number of allies you can affect this way equals your proficiency bonus. So you get 2 at level 1, 3 at level 5, and so on and so forth. So heroic inspiration is the replacement for the generic inspiration that you would get in 2014 that gave you advantage on any roll that you wanted to have advantage on. Heroic inspiration works a little differently, where you just re-roll the dice if you want to. I think it's any d20 test, so attack rolls, ability check, saving throws. Can you re-roll damage with it as well? I think you might. I might be wrong. I might be thinking of something else, but you basically just get to re-roll something at any time. So this is actually extremely good. The 3 musical instrument proficiencies, that's whatever. You just kind of need it to make the feat happen because you need to be able to play music apparently. But the ability to give inspiration to your allies throughout the game, and you're getting, again, that's 2 to start with, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. You're going to probably be covering your whole party by the end of the game, if you last that long. But this is a big teamwork thing. This is going to be similar to, in 2014, there was kind of the joke of who's going to be the paladin to give us paladin aura. I think the discussion at level 1 these days for those same groups is going to be who's going to be the musician, because this happens every short or long rest. So as many short rests as you get during the day, you give out, starting at level 1, twice that amount of inspiration to your allies. That's incredible, to be honest. And it's a nice little roleplay moment to have during your short and long rests. I just love things like that. I think it's very strong. I'm going to put this one up at S tier as well. So Musician has come a very long way from 2014 for how good it is. And, a lot of things give heroic inspiration now. I think the human gets it at the end of every long rest just naturally. I think generally speaking, there's probably going to be a lot more things throwing it around. I think there's probably going to be some guidance in the Dungeon Master's Guide about how to use it as a Dungeon Master. So, Musician, very good. I'd probably put it ahead of Alert. I'm going to be asking who has Musician before I'm going to be asking who's going to take Alert. But again, both S tier, both very good. Someone should take them. Moving on, we have Savage Attacker. It says you've trained to deal particularly damaging strikes. Once per turn, when you hit a target with a weapon, you can roll the weapon's damage dice twice and use either roll against the target. Actually, initially when I saw this, I thought it said you could do this on every strike, but it does say just once per turn, so that's much worse, of course. This might be fine if you're a rogue and you're only attacking maybe once per turn, maybe twice at the most. But even then, this is so niche, and again, I would take any of these feats more than it. The only time I would ever take this feat is if I was going really try hard. I'm going to make a build that does the most damage possible, and even then it's possible that something on the the wizard spell list or the druid spell list might boost me in a way that I'm maybe not, I don't know, but there's only very niche, very memey scenarios where I'm going to be using this feat. Is it at D tier? It's definitely better than Crafter. Again, Crafter I wouldn't even put on this list if I could. I think I'm going to put it at D. Just because I would build a character with it just to work out the numbers, but I don't think I'd ever actually play with it. All right, moving on, we're going to go to Skilled. It says you gain proficiency in any combination of 3 skills or tools of your choice, and it is repeatable if you want to take it more than once. So Skilled is basically the same as it ever was. I think it wasn't repeatable initially, but now it is. So if you really want to build a skill junkie, you can. There is an epic boon feat that gives you proficiency in all skills. but we'll go over that a little bit later. I don't want to talk too much about that right now. But again, skilled is, proficiency in skills is fine, and if your campaigns are much more leaning on the the social and role play aspects, or the exploration aspects, and is very combat light, you might get a lot more mileage out of a feat like skilled. So it's worth taking then. However, I don't think that's how most people play, even on the more role play heavy tables. I think have a fair amount of combat. The only time I would take this is if I'm building an oops all skills sort of character, which I probably will at some point, because I think it's just fun to do, to be kind of pretty good at everything. Not that I want to succeed all the time. I just think it's fun to kind of character that's just kind of the burnt out millennial who's just like, I'm kind of good at everything, but I'm not really great at everything. You know what I mean? So because it's that niche, and because I think people do like to make those builds, I feel pretty confident putting this at C tier. Do I think that people would do it more than Magic Initiate Cleric? I don't know. I think it probably values skilled above Magic Initiate Cleric. Not necessarily for those niche builds, just because having more proficiencies is good. All right, moving on from skilled, let's move on to Tavern Brawler. So Tavern Brawler says you get enhanced unarmed strike. When you hit with your unarmed strike and deal damage, you can deal bludgeoning damage equal to 1d4 plus your strength modifier instead of the normal damage of an unarmed strike. Normal damage is just 1 plus your strength. Damage re-rolls. Whenever you roll a damage die for your unarmed strike, you can re-roll the die if it's a 1, and you must use the new roll, which of course you're going to because you rolled a 1 to begin with anyway. Improvised weaponry. You have proficiency with improvised weapons. And then push. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike as part of the attack action on your turn, you can deal damage to the target and also push it 5 feet away from you. You can use this benefit only once per turn. Now, unarmed builds I think are pretty popular. I don't know that they're the most popular thing, but I do see a lot of talk about it pretty frequently on forums, Reddit, wherever you look for your Dungeons and Dragons information. I think the first feature is kind of a dead feature, because any class or any build that you're going to use is either going to have at least 1 level in monk, or if not more, or they're going to take the unarmed fighting style from the fighter. So you're going to start off with a better unarmed strike damage die than this will give you. However, the damage rerolls, of course, are always going to be relevant no matter who you are. I don't think there's any other feature that gives you this ability to reroll on ones on unarmed strikes. Improvised weapons proficiency is pretty good. Again, it's a very popular playstyle, especially among people who want to be attacking in unarmed strikes. Kind of the sort of Jackie Chan sort of character. And then the push feature is actually also very good. There's a lot of different things that allow you to push when you either hit a creature, or you can, again, it's sort of the shove action, the push mastery. I think push mastery is probably even going to be more prevalent in certain tables than topple. Of course, topple is very good for giving you advantage on your melee attacks, but there are a lot of emanations or area of effect abilities that you can push enemies into now. So the ability to kind of push and pull and move them in and out of it and make them take more damage, make sure that they take as much damage per round as they possibly can. In an optimized table like that, the push feature I think is very valued here. So where would I put Tavern Brawler? Again, it's pretty niche, but I think it's popular enough that it's not so niche to be like the skilled. I'm building, the skill junkie. So I think I'm going to put it in B tier. I feel pretty good about that. Do I think it's better than Magic Initiate Druid? First of all, I think Healer... Actually, I think I said these can go either way, right? I'm going to put Tavern Brawler at the top, to be honest. Personally, because I loved unarmed builds. I wish there was even more support for them than just what we have currently. Because again, a lot of the things in the game scale with weapon damage. I think they've done a better job at including unarmed strikes in a lot of descriptions. But we'll see how it works out with the magic items and stuff in the DMG if there's more unarmed strike support. So lastly, let's move on. We've got one feature left. We're going to go on to tough. So tough is the same as it's always been. Your hit point maximum increases by an amount equal to twice your character level when you gain this feat. So normally you're gaining this at level 1 if you're taking it as an Origin Feat, so you get 2 extra hit points at level 1. Whenever you gain a character level thereafter, your hit point maximum increases by an additional 2 points. So at level 20, this is an extra 40 hit points. Pretty good. It's a pretty, it's not the most exciting feat, but 40 hit points is 40 hit points. Things hit pretty hard at level 20 if you're facing a big giant creature. You might survive an extra 1 or 2 hits depending on if you're resisting damage or not. But it's who would I take this over? I would take this over skilled for sure. I think B tier, like a low B tier is pretty fair for tough, I think. I would take it over skilled. I would take it over Magic Initiate Cleric in most situations. I would take it over Magic Initiate Druid. Would I? I mean, if probably. Would I take it before Healer? Because Healer's kind of a niche too. Somewhere in B tier. I'm not gonna min max this too much on where these things are in position. But I feel pretty good about this spread, and honestly, this kind of looks like a bell curve almost. So I think they'd actually, based on my own assertions here, I think this is actually a pretty well balanced group of feats. Of course, we don't hope to see anything in the D tier, but there's always got to be some junkers. Skilled, again, very niche. Magic Initiate Cleric. Again, you're probably going for something very specific over the Druid. So that's why I'm ranking it a little bit lower. But everything else I think makes a lot of sense. If you're in the D tier, if you're going to use Savage Attacker or a Crafter, what are you doing? That's my question. What are you doing? So, let me know in the comments. What if you're choosing Savage Attacker or Crafter? What are you doing with those feats with your character? I want to know to see if there's something that I missed. So on your way down to the comments, please hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, because I'm going to cover the other groups of feats in the future, hit that subscribe button. I don't know if the notification bell even works, but click that if you really want to. But I hope I appreciate you watching this video. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.